Welcome back to Trippin Arcades. This is episode number 2. And for this episode, my wife and I went on another road trip from St. Louis to Illinois this time. And this was recommended to us by a friend on Facebook. So that is why we ended up in this arcade. And this arcade is called Arcadia. And it is in McLean, Illinois. So this was about, I guess, an hour and a half from where I live. So it wasn't too far of a drive. And as always, I never know what to expect. You know, you end up going to these arcades, and one of the fun things about going to these, just seeing these arcades, is seeing the towns these arcades are in. And this town was pretty interesting. Now, the first one we reviewed was in sort of a college town. You know, there was a lot of buildings, a lot of businesses, a lot of food places, and they had parks and fountains. This one was pretty much out in the middle of nowhere. And when I say nowhere, I really mean nowhere. This was a small town, a town that's so small that if you blinked, you would miss it. There is one town square right in the center of town, and there's, you know, some buildings surrounding this town square, and there's like an old bank and post office and drugstore. And then there's Arcadia. Arcadia is real small. The building is very small. It's not a large building whatsoever. And again, you know, if you didn't know it was there, you would have just drive past it and miss it. That's how small this place is. The town itself is interesting. They have like a very large, looked like a feed mill or some sort of mill there. And they had, like I said, the middle of the square in the middle of the town was actually pretty nice. And it had a very large memorial for like all the Vietnam vets and military vets, and that was really cool, very nice. It had a bell there, and actually it wasn't that bad of a town. It was kind of interesting, you know, going to this town and seeing this place out in the middle of nowhere, which I would have never went to and never visited if I hadn't gone to this arcade. However, the town was pretty much deserted, and the thing about the town that's weird is they had these gigantic houses that were there. And some of them were still under construction and, I mean, being fixed up. And they were just really cool houses, just gigantic houses, and there's a whole block of these houses. So Arcadia itself, once you walk in there, you're greeted with sort of like a area that you can sit down in. It has like couches and chairs and stuff like that. And there's an old jukebox there that you can play all the 80s songs and stuff, and that, you know, costs money to obviously play that. And that is one thing I have to say about this arcade is, unlike the last arcade we went to, this one you had to pay for every machine that you played, which I am not a big fan of, but at the same time, I guess, you know, I can kind of see why that's the way it is, I suppose, in such a small town, because there was nobody in the place, which is another weird thing I found odd. My wife and I went in there, and there was no person running the place. They just opened up the doors, and they went somewhere, and the place was just open with no supervision. There was nobody in the place whatsoever the entire time we were there. First of all, they did have a really good selection of pinball games. They had a whole wall of pinball games, and that was really cool because of the one we went to before had pinball games, but didn't have this kind of selection. So some of the ones they had there were Doctor Who, which was really cool. I played that a couple times, and they played the Doctor Who music and everything while you're playing, and they have like all the doctors on there. Then they had the Twilight Zone. Addams Family was pretty good. Then they had a really nice one of Rocky and Bullwinkle. I really liked all the graphics and everything on that. That was pretty cool. They had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And there was just a whole lot more. I mean, there's a whole line of them. And a lot of them were 50 cents, some of them were 25 cents, and you know, if you're taking a whole pocket full of change, you know, you can go through it pretty quick just playing those pinball machines. So as for the rest of the place, it's basically you walk in there and it's almost like a U shape. You walk in and you go around and you come back out to the front, but they did have a back room back there as well, which had, you know, maybe about 6 or 7 machines in there. And they had most of the classics like Pac-Man. They did have the Tron machine. I believe Q*bert was there, I think. I'm not positive. They had Star Wars, which they had the stand-up arcade machine of Star Wars. And I prefer the one that you sit down in the ship. But it's the same game, but you just got to stand up to play it. And they also had Empire Strikes Back, which I don't think I've ever played before, because that was really an interesting game. I don't know if I've ever played it. If I did, I don't remember playing it. So that one was kind of new to me. They also had Ghosts and Goblins, which I used to play all the time. I believe it was on the NES, and I love that game. But I never actually played the stand-up version of it. So that was kind of cool to play the whole stand-up version of Ghosts and Goblins. But again, the problem comes in to you have to, and if you're playing Ghosts and Goblins, you die a lot. So you constantly have to start putting quarters and quarters into this thing if you want to, you know, play more than once, obviously. And it gets really expensive really quick. In the back of the store, they had a machine that played multiple games, and I thought that was kind of a cheat. I like playing the original machine, you know, I like playing standing in front of the Pac-Man machine, knowing that this is it, this is the machine that, you know, Pac-Man originally came in. But they had one that had, I don't know, it was like 20 or 30 games in one machine, so there was a screen, you could pick whatever game you wanted to play, and a few of them on there were pretty cool because I had never played them, or I haven't played them in a long time. And there was Zaxxon on there. And it's hard to judge where you're at.
I was going to say you're already doing better than me, but then you died.
And there was, I think Super Pac-Man was on there. And that was pretty fun. I think that's what it was called, Super Pac-Man. And I actually enjoyed that one quite a lot. I played it a few times, actually, and it was a really cool Pac-Man game. But, again, kind of disappointing that all of these games were crammed into just one machine. And, yeah, I know, it's sort of a, like, I don't know, might not be a big deal for somebody. But it was for me. Like I said, I like the original stand-up arcade machines. I don't want 20 games in one machine. It's like coming home and buying a disc that has 20 games on it and playing it. I mean, it's like, okay. But, yeah, I mean, it was fun to play a few of those games. But out of all the games that were there, and there wasn't that many, there was not a huge selection of games. Because this, like I said, this is a small place. They had more impressive pinball machines than they did, I think, stand-up arcade games. But the one that we started playing, and I absolutely loved it, oh, it was so much fun, was called Track and Field. And my wife started playing it first, and oh man, we had a blast. We played that thing for an hour. And it's one of those games that has like a rolly ball, and you sit there and just hit the rolly ball and try to, you know, go as fast as you can and hit the button and the person jumps. Just blast playing that game.
The time, 10.75 seconds.
There you are.
No, I just gotta qualify. That's all I gotta do. You fix something? I swear to Christ, I hit the button. Maybe this button over here will work. Nope.
Wow, all 3 times you messed up.
Like, you want to do better?
5.35 meters.
So in all, I liked Arcadia. It was just sort of a strange place. There wasn't a huge selection of games, not by any stretch of the imagination. There was, if I had to guess, I don't know how many was in there, but I would probably guess less than 40, maybe 50. And that sounds like a lot, but in such a small area, it's not really. It might have been even less than that. I don't remember exact. I didn't count how many games were in there. And they did have some things on the wall. I think they only had one thing on the wall. It was like a neon image of a pinball machine. So, but I did like the fact that they had a jukebox up there that you could play 80s music if you wanted to. So that was kind of fun that you could have some sort of 80s nostalgia while you're playing the game. Not a terrible place, but not a great place. I can't sit here and tell you, well, you need to drive 2 hours to this place if you're anywhere around the area. I mean, if you live 40 minutes or 30 minutes away, yeah, go visit it. You'll have fun. But if you live an hour, 2 hours away, it's quite a long drive just for sort of a hole-in-the-wall arcade is basically what it was. I can tell you the truth, I thought the town was more interesting than the arcade was. But I did have fun with track and field, and they did have some decent pinball machines. So, because of that, I will give Arcadia a 2.5 out of 5. What really brings the score down is having to pay for every single machine in there instead of, having somebody standing there and give them $10 and play all day or whatever. Not having any supervision at all in the place is, again, really weird. There was no arcade games except for track and field that really stood out to me, and I didn't find anything new that I loved. That's one of the things I'm wanting to find when I go to these arcades is a machine or a pinball machine that I'd never played, and I just absolutely love it. I did not find any of that stuff there, and I didn't find any of some of the older games that I've loved there either. So stuff that I haven't played in forever, none of that stuff was there. But if you happen to be in the Illinois McLean area and you want to check it out, absolutely stop by, because there is some fun stuff there, but it's just not worth a long trip to get there. So there's been an update that I had heard that they took, I think, all the pinball machines out of Arcadia, and they bought the bank, I think is what it was, and now they transformed the bank into just a pinball area. So maybe they added more machines to Arcadia and took the pinball machines out. I'm actually interested in seeing what they did, so I might put that on my trip radar this year once it gets warmer, once the summer comes, and maybe make another trip out there and check out the pinball area and see if they did any updates to Arcadia itself. Because it's not that far, hour and a half away isn't terrible for me to drive over there. So until then, I'll see you at the arcades.